Strange Studies of Strange Stories.
Dead men tell no tales, except to Harry Keogh, Necroscope. And what they tell him is horrifying. In the Balkan Mountains of Romania, long buried in hallowed ground, a master vampire schemes. Trapped in unlife, neither dead nor living, Tibor Ferenczi hungers for freedom and revenge. The vampire's human tool is Boris Dragozani, part of a super-secret Soviet spy agency competing with the West for ESP supremacy. Dragozani is a necromancer, one who rips secrets from the minds and bodies of the deceased against their will, a man with his own agenda of world domination. His only opponent, Harry Keogh, possessed of the ability to speak freely with the dead and their resting places, a gifted student of history's greatest minds, their champion. To protect Harry, the dead will do anything, even rise from their graves.
That was a paraphrasing of the blurb from the back of my copy of Necroscope.
Yes!
It would have been the first thing I read back in the late 80s when I first picked up this novel of horror, science fiction, and Cold War espionage by Brian Lumley. Hello, folks. I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey. Welcome to Strange Studies of Strange Stories. Even though the days are getting longer, it isn't making the nights any less deadly because, folks, March is for Draculas.
The clocks may be springing forward, but so are the Draculads and Draculadies springing forward right out of the bushes and into your virgin ears, dear listeners.
Who was that reader?
Well, that was this podcast poet, Draculaureate, Eric Peabody of Viking Guitar Productions. And he sounds quite nice. I also roped Eric into working on some music with me and our pal Lyle Erickson for this series of shows, which you've been hearing. But I'll talk more about that at the end of the episode.
You also dragged me into the world of Necroscope. My exposure to this book was back in high school, and you just telling me the whole plot. All of it.
I loved these books back then, and I know I told you about them, but I don't remember that I went into that much detail. I really told you everything, huh?
I think so.
I wish somebody had recorded us talking about it, and then we could have just taken this month off and used that audio.
Well, I didn't read the book at the time. I did read a comic adaptation done by Malibu Comics back in 1992, also the publisher of Nightman.
I'm glad it only took 35 years or so for you to take my recommendation. I'm glad to revisit the book myself.
We've covered Brian Lumley before on Strange Studies in episode 143 with the story The Second Wish, and we talked a bit about Necroscope on that show.
I think that's what finally tipped you over, right? That's when you picked it up and read it. We've mentioned the novel plenty over the years, actually, because as with The Second Wish, Lumley was a contributor to the Cthulhu mythos, and there is a heavy Lovecraftian angle in the Necroscope series. But before we jump into the plot, one thing I also remember from those high school years, you introduced me to the world of miniature gaming. You invited me down to Keys Game and Hobby in East Moline to play Star Wars miniature battles. And I had no idea what that was. I went down there. The terrain was all set up. Everybody had their teams and their miniatures. It was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. The reason I mention this is because our sponsor this week combines this exact type of miniature gaming with the Lovecraft mythos.
Woo!
I'm talking, of course, about cosmic horror, supernatural horror in miniature.
Brought to you by Spectre Miniatures. Cosmic Horror is the new and innovative tabletop war game set in Lovecraft's 1930s America. Players take control of small assemblies of subjects, cults, criminal enterprises, government agents, and academic institutions, all drawn to dark corners of the earth in the search for fragmented knowledge. There's no good side or bad side in Cosmic Horror. Everybody has an agenda.
In the game, you'll confront other players' assemblies and non-player entities, monsters. The fight is physical, but also psychological, which is represented by game-wide atmospheric effects. Will you gather this knowledge to better understand the world, suppress and destroy it, or use it to usher mankind into a new dark age? Whatever you decide, remember, do not call up that which you cannot put down.
The Kickstarter for Cosmic Horror is launching March 17th, but you can follow the project right now, early backers will get a free H.P. Lovecraft miniature.
You actually got to play the game, right?
I did. I got to meet Steven and Jess in person. They showed me the game. It's super fun. I like the gameplay a lot. It's pretty simple rules. I think anybody could jump into it, but it's got enough complexity to keep things interesting.
Cosmic Horror is sponsoring this series of shows on Necroscope.
Yes.
So don't be a necro dope. Sign up and back this game.
Necroscope was first published by HarperCollins in 1986. I would have been about 13 when this book came out.
In England. I mean, you would have been 13 anywhere, but it was published by HarperCollins in England. However, the first printing in the U.S. was in 1988
Yes.
by our friends at Tor Horror.
Oh, that's right.
They were early supporters of this podcast, and it turns out they were also early supporters of Brian Lumley. That was the copy I picked up my freshman or sophomore year, and it is maybe the most famous edition because it's got the Bob Eggleton cover painting of a vampire skull with its pointed tongue. His illustrations on this series, to me, are the pinnacle of 80s horror paperback art.
Yeah.
We will link out to them, as we have before. In an edition of Necroscope from the early 2000s, Lumley includes a foreword about the genesis of this whole book series. Here's a little about the publication process from the author. The book, all 150,000 words of it, had taken from the 14th of March to the 14th of September, 1984, in the writing. 6 months exactly. Note that he started during 1984's Marches for Draculas, as appropriate.
Yep.
The manuscript went to Grafton Books in London, who were enthusiastic about it and going to publish it. If I remember correctly, my advance against royalties was £3,000, about $4,500 in the US. Ouch! But remember, this was 1984. Even so, it wasn't good money. But at least I wouldn't starve in 1985. In 1986, Necroscope saw its first printing. These things do take their time. And in the weeks and months that followed, I experienced one of those rough spots. Because this was the book that I had been certain would fly, and here it was still on the ground, hadn't even taken off. I thought it was the jacket. The very garish, yellowish jacket was, to me, a real turnoff. I spoke to Grafton, who agreed, and re-released Necroscope with new jacket artwork by George Underwood. And that's actually a different, equally famous cover for this book, that original cover, and also no less metal. It's a side view of a skull with all sorts of arteries and gore flying in and out of it. Lumley had a sense that the cover was important, and he was right. He continues, the new cover worked, rough spot rubbed out. Necroscope finally flying, and I do mean flying off the bookstore shelves. Meanwhile, in October 1986, I had attended the World Fantasy Convention in Providence, Rhode Island, H.P. Lovecraft's hometown. I was broke, or pretty much so, but friends had helped pay my way, and I really did want to see the USA, and especially Providence. And it was a most providential visit, because that was where I met Tom Doherty, the boss at Tor Books. We hit it off straight away, and at Tor's party, I dared give him a dog-eared copy of that failed first printing. Back in England almost a year later, by which time I had finished the second book in the series, and I was just putting the finishing touches to the third, I got a call from Tor Books with an offer, which at the time was very good. And so finally, along with accelerating sales in the UK, finally we were definitely off and running. I'm delighted to say that here we are 19 years after the first printing, and Necroscope and its now 13 sequels are still selling well in the UK, the US, and 10 other countries. Japan will make it 11. Comics and a graphic novel have been produced from the books, quality figurines of principal characters, and even a role-playing game. In Germany, Necroscope has become a talking book, and after many nibbles, the book has finally been optioned for a movie. Again, this is a foreword that Lumley wrote around 2005. I don't know what he means by a talking book version in Germany, but that sounds really frightening. I don't know if I want to know.
I don't know. The series continued after that forward. All told, this ended up being a series of 18 books.
Amazing. Well, we're going to cover the first 9 in this episode. No, we're not. We're only going to cover this first book all month, but I do believe this is the longest work we've ever covered on the show.
I think so.
My paperback copy's around 500 pages. I know I was the one who read this first, but I never thought we'd cover it. You were kind of the champion for covering this book.
Yeah, because I had so much fun reading it, and it was one of those experiences where I picked that as entertainment. Reading Necroscope was the entertainment. If I had the option of watching television, playing video games, eating, any of those things, they failed. I went back to Necroscope. I'd stayed up a little later at night to go, I'm going to read just one more chapter. Even though it's a big book and there's a lot that happens in it, we could kind of whittle it down to some of the cool essentials that will hopefully motivate you to pick it up and read it and have fun with it too.
Let's necrolope into Necroscope, beginning with the prologue.
In the opening scene, we are at the offices of a secret British intelligence spy group that employs people with psychic powers. We're following this guy, Alec Kyle, who is the next in line to head the division, as his boss, Sir Keenan Gormley, has recently died. He's about to face an inquest where he will have to justify the existence of this secret group, and it seems that some people in the government are very skeptical of its results.
We find out that Kyle's superpower is that he sometimes has involuntary premonitions. He can see into the future, basically, and he has had one such vision in which he saw himself at his boss's old desk holding a file labeled Harry Keogh.
Going into the office, we can see that it's very high-tech with voice verification and the like. Just as his vision predicted, he sits at Sir Gormley's desk and he finds the file on Harry Keogh. Just then, the temperature drops and a naked, glowing, translucent man appears floating in the air in front of him. This apparition psychically communicates peace and calmness and tells Kyle that he's not a ghost, but what he is not important right now. He knows Kyle's name, and he knows about Gormley, the psychic branch, and he's got a lot to tell Kyle. He's going to need a few hours of his time to frame this story, so he says you might want to go get some coffee and have a smoke.
And that's the prologue. The whole narrative that's about to unfold, whenever you're in the depths of it and it seems very serious, remember it's being told by a floating, glowing, naked Harry Keogh, which, spoiler, that's who it is. It's Harry Keogh from the future, which is great.
Yes.
This prologue does a good job of describing the unique value proposition of this book.
Kyle sat down at the desk. Funny world, he thought. Robots and romantics. Super science and the supernatural. Telemetry and telepathy, computerized probability patterns and precognition, gadgets and ghosts.
The world of these books is James Bond meets Weird Tales. It's like Tales from the Crypt from Russia with love. And that's what I dug about it then, and it still feels unique.
Yeah.
A good opening will give you an overall picture of a work's tone and scope, and I think this does that. And then in chapter 1, it gives you an overall picture of the gore in this novel. Mm-hmm. The story that Harry wants the new head of the British ESP branch to hear begins with a pretty frightening scene.
Yes. We're in Moscow, May 1971. It's at this place called Chateau Bronnetsy, hidden out in the woods outside of Moscow. It's a bit of a retrofit of an old building with modern elements built into it. This is the headquarters of the USSR's ESP branch, and it's run by this guy called Gregor Borowitz. He's an older guy who knows how to play the spy game. He's got an operative with a unique talent, this guy, Boris Dragozani. He is a necromancer.
He goes into an interrogation room with a corpse. The corpse is an operative, and Borowitz suspects that this operative is part of a spying operation from a rival Russian agency. He wants information from this dead person. Borowitz watches from an observation room with two of his men, Mikhail Gurkov and Andrei Ustinov. They're basically going to see some horrible stuff happen, and Borowitz wants to gauge the reaction of these two underlings.
Dragozani strips totally naked, and he climbs up on the body. He sticks a tube into the corpse's stomach, and he breathes in the gas that comes out.
Ugh.
Not to be confused with the necroscope, a necromancer pries the secrets from the dead. He cuts up the body, he feels its organs, he tastes them. It's super gross. Gurkov blows chunks.
Just throws up. The whole process is horrifying. Here are some excerpts.
The naked man's back was bowed now, bringing his face to within inches of the corpse's exposed organs and entrails. Left and right, his eyes darted, up and down, as if they sought something hidden there. His nostrils were wide, sniffing suspiciously. His brow, hitherto smooth, was now furrowed in a fantastic frown. He resembled in his attitude nothing so much as a great naked bloodhound, intent upon tracking its prey. Then, a sly grin tugged at his gray lips. The gleam of revelation, of a secret discovered or about to be discovered, shone in his eyes. In went the naked man's hands. A terrible wrenching, and out they came, holding the prize aloft, but only for a moment. Then, holding the heart at arm's length in both hands, the naked man waltzed it across the room, whirled it round and round. He hugged it close, held it up to his eyes, his ears. He pressed it to his own chest, caressed it, sobbed like a baby. He sobbed his relief, burning tears coursing down his gray cheeks. And in another moment, all the strength seemed to go out of him. His legs trembled, became jelly. Still hugging the heart, he crumpled, plopped down on the floor, curled up into an almost fetal position with the heart lost in the curl of his body. He lay still.
So he physically stole secrets from this corpse, and in a pretty exhausting ceremonial surgical fact-finding mission in a man's body.
Yeah.
Death is supposed to be the one place, the last place where one can get peace. Dragosani violates that.
Yeah.
He's a very scary adversary.
Now, the secret that Dragosani extracts in this process is that one of the two underlings, Ustinov, is a plant and plans to kill Borowitz. Discovered, Ustinov pulls out a machine gun, and then there is a shootout and there's a grenade explosion, eventually ending in the death of Ustinov and the loyal Gurkov, with Borowitz being wounded.
An action-packed opening chapter. It's Tinker Tailor Necromancer Spy.
Borowitz rewards Dragosani for his help by sending him on a state-funded holiday. Dragosani wants to go back to his homeland in Romania for a trip. Something in the soil draws him home.
Chapter 2, we've met the bad guy. It's time to meet our hero.
We shift gears to a kid at school, a 13-year-old Harry Keogh, who is a student at an English boys' school. He's having a dream/memory/vision of a drowning woman caught in the ice. She sees a hole and swims to it, but she's pushed back down in the water by a man's hand. Her last thoughts are for Harry before she's killed. He's pulled out of his vision by his teacher, Mr. Hannett, who berates him for not paying attention.
In my paperback, there's an inside illustration, a painting of a dead woman with glowing eyes bursting out of an icy body of water.
Oh.
So I think I intuited immediately, this is something terrible that happened to his mother. She's going to break out of that ice eventually. So, I knew that was coming. But he's our hero in this journey, and heroes tend to be orphans with mysterious parentage. So there's some of that going on.
Harry lives in a working-class mining town in the north of England. He lives there with his aunt and uncle. After his mother died in the winter of 1963, he moved in with them. He was 6 when she died. Harry is a bit of the class oddball. He often has daydreams that he can't stop. They feel more like memories than dreams. There is a scene where Harry's class is going down to the beach. Harry sneaks off and finds his teachers having sex with one another. Mm-hmm. One is the PT teacher, Graham Lane. We get a lot more detail here than I think we really need about the actual sex that's going on. But that's the kind of pulp that you get in this book.
I don't know. I think I did need that detail when I read this in high school. There's a lot of sexual content. And
yes,
I guarantee I picked this up from the Book Emporium, which was a corner shop. I would go there and look for any vampire books, anything that had a cover like that, and I would pick it up. Most of those books, if it wasn't Anne Rice, and even a little Anne Rice, they were pretty salacious.
Oh, yeah.
Under the guise of my horror books, I was able to read about sex. Earlier in the year, when I was talking to our reader, Eric, about the book, and he was just reading it, he wrote me, "Man, Lumley sure knows the formula to sell a book. I feel like I need to hide this under my bed from my parents." Which I think is right. That was part of the allure of it. In the story, Harry knows that his teachers are going to sneak off for sex, and so he goes to watch them.
The class bully, Stanley Green, finds Harry creeping and peeping, but he doesn't notice what he's peeping on. To torment Harry, he steps on this cool shell that he found, and then he sucker punches him. Mr. Lane hears the commotion, comes out, and he just shuts it down.
Yep.
And he really gives Stanley what for and humiliates him in front of the other kids because he does not like bullies.
He doesn't like his sex interrupted, and he doesn't like bullies.
Stanley still has beef with Harry, and he's going to come after him again.
That night, Mr. Hannett is walking home from school, and he actually sees Harry hanging out in a cemetery doing his homework. So he sits and he talks to Harry for a while.
They start talking about math, or maths, as they say here in the UK. And it seems that Harry has a deep understanding of some really complicated stuff. And something in the way that Harry talks about math reminds Mr. Hannett of his father, who was a math genius who taught at the school and passed away years ago. And strangely, he happens to be buried right next to where Harry is sitting.
I had forgotten that even though the concept of this book is all over the cover, the story still builds this long mystery about what's going on with Harry. Who's he talking to out there in the cemetery?
The next chapter, 3, is for me kind of the slowest part of the book because it's told from the perspective of Mr. Hannett trying to make sense of Harry. He wants Harry to go to technical college and talks with the current school's headmaster, Howard Jameson. Jameson gives the boy a magic square test. Harry, he nails it.
So it's being revealed that he has this intuitive understanding of maths. And the sheer amount of math that is in this book is kind of surprising for a horror novel.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes it unique. Meanwhile, as Harry's being assessed for these skills, the gym teacher, the PT teacher who had defended him, Graham Lane, unfortunately dies in an accident. It's really horrible because the other teacher he was hooking up with, they were planning a future together.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't just horny camp counselors. They were in love.
Yeah.
About a week later, Harry is getting picked on again by this bully, Stanley. And obviously the teacher's not there anymore to defend him. His friend Jimmy is trying to protect Harry, who's normally kind of a weak, sullen boy. But suddenly, Harry starts to act differently.
"Stay out of it, Jimmy," said Harry in his new gritty voice. "I'm all right." "All right, is it?" cried Big Stanley. "I'll say you're not. I'll say you're in the shit." With his last word, he swung his fist for the smaller boy's head. Harry ducked easily, stepped forward, jabbed with a straight arm, fingers straight and stiff. Big Stanley folded in the middle, jackknifed, his face coming down on Harry's knee, which was coming up. The crack was like a pistol shot. Green straightened up and flew backward, his arms straight out from his shoulders, and down he crashed on the sand. Harry stepped close. "Go on, bully. Say something." Green said nothing, reached up a trembling hand to touch his broken nose, his split mouth. Then he started to cry real tears. "Listen, shithead. If you even speak to me, I'll hit you so hard you'll be shitting teeth for a month. Have you got that, shithead?" Big Stanley turned on his side in the sand and cried even harder.
I love it when a bully gets his comeuppance. And he cries. He cries. Yeah. Oh.
Clearly, Harry is downloading fighting moves from his deceased gym teacher. When we talked about this book before, I mentioned the wish fulfillment of just having access to knowledge. You know, instead of studying for history, Harry can get the info from a dead historian or the actual historical figures being discussed. Or as in this case, he can kind of allow himself to be possessed in order to win a fight. All of the great knowledge and power of the Necroscope is appealing. But to me, I think especially at the time, nothing was more appealing about it than the low effort aspect. The fact that you could be kind of a lazy dude and get all this stuff was very appealing to my teenage self.
Yeah. Jameson persuades Jack Harmon, the head of the technical college, to let Harry take the test. He aces the math part of the test, but he doesn't do great in English. But Harmon accepts Harry anyway because he's so flipping good at math.
Not just good, but he managed to approach some of the problems in a completely original way that shows signs of this instinctive mathematical genius.
Mr. Hannett fills Harmon in on Harry's background, and we learned that although Harry is Irish-Scottish, he's also Russian on his mother's side. His grandmother fled Russia during the Revolution.
And that's important because later you'll find out that his mother's killer is an ex-Russian spy, and it'll be the reason the hero and the villain cross paths.
Yes.
But that gets us to Chapter 4. Some time has passed. It's the summer of 1972. And Dragozani is in Romania on leave from the evil Soviet ESP branch.
He arrives in a small Romanian village and stays at an inn. We learn that Dragozani is researching local history and that he has been back to the area where he grew up 3 times in the last 3 years. He tells the innkeeper that he's a mortician in Moscow.
Right. He always stays in different places when he's visiting this area to kind of cover his tracks.
And that night, he eats with the innkeeper's family. And the innkeeper has a young adult daughter, Ilsa, who seems to be interested, if you know what I mean, in Dragozani.
The innkeeper keeps trying to find out, why are you really in this area? And Dragozani lets slip that, he's interested in myths about vampires.
And this causes the innkeeper to laugh, thinking that's the stuff to dupe American tourists.
Yeah.
And the innkeeper's wife says, it's not all silly. Folks still stake dead people sometimes if they're suspicious that they might turn into vampires. Before Dragozani heads back to his room, Ilsa tells him that if he needs anything in the middle of the night, wink, wink, leave the curtain open, and this seems to make Dragozani uncomfortable. That night, he wakes up late and he notices that the curtain is kind of open, and he goes over really fast and he pins it closed because he does not want her coming in.
Even though Dragozani is a young man, he's a virgin and he's sexually inexperienced. probably like the readers of this book. He's been focused on his goals and there's no room for romance. But he does recognize that there is a practical purpose for sex. It may have psychological benefits for him and allow him to be even better at achieving his goals. So he is interested in it in that way. And this action carries over into chapter 5, where he has rebuffed the innkeeper's daughter again because he wants to go about achieving his real purposes in the region.
At bedtime, he makes sure that the curtains are closed again, and he lies in bed and he reaches out psychically and contacts a mind. Old one, I'm back. I bring you hope in return for knowledge. And a voice touches his mind in answer, and the voice calls him my son. Dragosani says, I've got power in this world, but I want more. The voice says, in 4 more years, you will sit at my right hand and I will teach you many things. But Dragosani is like, 4 years is a long time for us who aren't sleeping in the ground, old man. The voice says that it's been down there for a long time, and being trapped is bad, sure, but being forgotten is even worse. Since you've roused me, I've had yearnings again. Dragosani's mind drifts off and he thinks of a banner with a bat and a dragon and a devil on it.
He's getting impressions of this vampire that he's communicating with, this ancient vampire, Tibor Ferenczi. The reader doesn't know all of this yet, but we're required by law to have a certain amount of vampire content during Marches for Dracula, so I'm telling you that now. That's who he's talking to, Tibor Ferenczi, the ancient vampire. And I love it anytime this character comes on because he goes, Dragosani.
He does.
Every time. It's so funny.
It's great.
The first knowledge that Dragosani is after is actually knowledge of his own origins.
Dragosani says, I might be able to free you if you tell me my parents' story.
The voice admits to Dragosani why he is saying he is his father.
Picture it. The year is 1945. A young woman and a young man have an awkward sexual encounter right at my tomb. Somehow the thing in the tomb pushed into her mind and then into his mind.
Right. Since these two people were getting down right by the evil vampire's tomb, he was able to enter their minds and kind of control them as well.
So he basically had psychic sex with himself.
Yeah.
She was a virgin, and the voice gets super creepy about it. She bled during this intercourse, and that blood seeped into the ground for him to taste.
So because he was mentally involved in their coupling, the vampire in the ground says some of him is now in the child that was born of that union, who is Dragosani.
The next day, Dragosani sets out early for his childhood home. His attention is on the hills, and he remembers how he found that place as a boy, how the voice reached out to him and promised to teach him things about the dead, about undeath, and that's how he learned necromancy.
He learned it from this vampire in the ground, who he came across accidentally in his childhood forest meanderings. And since learning about necromancy seemed to work out for him, he also wants to pick the vampire's brain about many things, including sex, since he is interested in that innkeeper's daughter. This is the only father figure he's got, so he wants to get all the information he can. And he has his own goals because he believes he's of this long line of Wallachian or Transylvanian rulers. He wants to bring that old order. He wants to bring that about again with him at the top, which is why world domination was mentioned in that opening we heard.
Right.
So he's a tool of both the Soviet psychic branch and also this vampire, but he wants to use those guys to his ends as well.
Chapter 6, Dragosani brings a small tribute for the vampire, a piglet. But he first wants to know how he himself can become a vampire. And we get some talk about classic vampire legends, sunlight, crosses, mirrors, blood drinking. The truth is that sunlight weakens a vampire but doesn't destroy it. Crosses can be hated, but they aren't magic. Shape-shifting is a deception, illusions created by psychic projections.
As you know, I love some new rules for a vampire, just as true today as it was 35 years ago. In Necroscope, the vampire's reputed powers are the result of mythology that's grown up around what they can actually do. Mm-hmm. They seem to be kind of alien in nature, not as supernatural as past vampires. By not really allowing us to understand this creature, Lumley has made them both monstrous and mysterious again, which is why this is a great vampire tale.
Dragosani wants to know if the bite of a vampire will turn you, but the old dragon is evasive about it. Dragosani slits the piglet's throat and pours the blood on the earth for the creature. The next day, Dragosani decides he needs to lose his virginity and plans to have sex with Ilsa. And we find out more about his sexual hang-ups.
This scene I certainly remembered from reading as a teenager.
When Dragosani was 13, he had to stay with his stepfather's sister in Bucharest. She had 2 teenage daughters, and they were very messed up sexually. There's some pretty graphic parts in this section of the book here. But long story short, they all individually and as a group aggressively tried to have sex with him. He also witnessed them having group sex with some older, gross guy. Mother, daughters, gross guy. The sex that he saw was disturbing and scary, and that's why he has avoided it his whole life.
The man they were having sex with in this flashback is presented as almost being a mythical figure. It actually says that.
Boris paused at the door to stare in through the inches-wide gap, and was shocked, almost rigid, by what he saw. The man, a stranger to Boris, bearded, pockmarked, huge in the belly, and hairy, was quite repulsive in his looks and almost malformed in his body. Also, he was naked. What Boris could not know was that he was a satyr, which by this house's standards more than compensated for his ugliness and malformation.
This man is able to satisfy all of these women repeatedly without rest, and this just blows the young boy's mind. I don't know if he's the one who's decided it was a satyr. This section is explicit, but it's not prurient, really. I think it's a scene of horror, actually. It reminded me of the great god Pan. He is astounded by the unashamed and unbridled sexuality of the women in his house. It's almost like he's witnessed witches frolicking in the woods with the devil.
Sure.
And even though this seemed to repel him, it also seems to attract him the way these first encounters as a child can. And I feel like he's decided I need to be the devil.
Well, that night, Dragozzani returns to the tomb, and he wants the old vampire to psychically guide him through losing his virginity. The creature is really into this idea, and you can imagine his idea of sex and love and women are probably not the best. Dragozzani goes back to the house, and he allows it to happen. It doesn't end as badly as I thought it would, but it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
The Soviet agents show up the next day and tell Dragozzani that he's needed back in Moscow, and he says his goodbye to the innkeeper and leaves.
From behind her drawn curtains, Ilsa watched him drive away and breathed a sigh of relief. It was unlikely she'd ever meet another like him, and maybe that was as well, but her bruises were blooming now, but would soon fade, and anyway, she could always say she had suffered a dizzy bout, tripped, and fallen. The bruises would disappear, yes, but not the memory of how she had got them. She sighed again, and shivered deliciously.
Man, this book made me feel weird and kind of sick back then. Still does.
Still does. And that's where we're going to leave it this week. Feeling weird and sick. I want to thank our sponsor again, Cosmic Horror, Supernatural Horror in Miniature. Check them out and follow the updates on their Kickstarter.
I also want to thank our reader, Eric Peabody. Like I said, we're working on some music for this series of episodes while we do them, and my plan is to release this music alongside that cover that Eric did of our Witch House theme. We've played it a bunch on the show. In fact, I'm playing it on the way out right now. We're going to make that available for sale, along with this new Necroscope music. We're doing it seat of our pants, so I'll keep folks posted when that is up for you to grab.
I want to thank our stakers and patrons for making this free show possible. Some patrons I want to mention: Curio Shelf, Greg Oliver Bodine, Lars Anderson, Bradley Sadiq, and Kristen Koziel.
And I want to mention Peter Chalice, Patrice Belly Rubs, Daniel Granner, David Goodman, and of course the letter H.
Until next time, I'm Chris Lackey, and you're listening to Marches for Draculas on Strange Studies of Strange Stories.
And I'm Chad Pfeiffer, Draculator, Draculaki.
Strange Studies of Strange Stories.